Hello, my friends, and welcome to beautiful Auckland, New Zealand. I am Bryan Gottlieb. We're here at the home of Legend Story Studios, and I've got a treat for you today. I've gotten together some of my best friends in the entire world. We're only a few weeks out from Pro Tour LA, and I thought we'd get together and break it down for you, let you know what we're expecting at this barn burner of an event. I'm joined by my friend Jason Lai over here, and over on the couch, you might recognize the boys from Session Blood. It is, of course, Mr. Classic, as well as Karol. Pleasure to have you all here with me today. And I want to get right into it. We're coming from maybe the most unexpected road to nationals ever in the history of the game. Just an absolute diverse metagame. Heroes from coming out of left field to win events. Olympia 9-0. 19 heroes taking down events in total of our 25. So just tremendous success. Extremely broad swath of heroes to prepare for right now. Did you guys expect this? I'll start with you, Classic. I mean, I know we talk about these outcomes in the dev room. We hypothesize around them. But this kind of diversity, is it what you had in mind when we were heading into Heavy Hitters Road to National season?
First of all, I love that you described me as one of your best friends. That's fantastic.
We can edit that out in post.
Really gave me a boost at the start of the stuff. But, I mean, Bryan, I feel like hero diversity metagames is something we always strive for, right? When we're working on these sets, like, we don't necessarily want to have just, like, 2 decks crushing everything. But I think it's maybe even come as a bit of a surprise to us just how diverse this metagame is. Just like you were saying, like 19 plus different heroes winning Road to Nationals. And not just that, but seeing the Road to Nationals metagame evolve week by week has been something really cool for me. Like, it's been a little while now since I played a Road to National season, but I can tell you, like, back in the day when I've played some or when I've experienced watching a lot over time, it feels like certain heroes just kind of emerge and everyone else has to adapt to them. And this one, that's somewhat of the case, but we saw something like Kano with the most wins. I feel like that came as a bit of a shock to a lot of people. It's definitely stirred up Twitter a little bit, I have to say. And then we see heroes like a lot of the heavy hitters heroes doing very well. So KO, for example, one of my favorites, Victor Goldmain, Kasai. And then just moving on to week 2, we then see sort of Bolton come out of nowhere, really, and pick up 8 wins off the top of the table. We see Victor rise to the top. We see Kano drop down a little bit, maybe once people have adjusted to it. So, I don't know, it's just been awesome to watch.
J-Li, this is one of the first sets that you worked on when you came to Legend Story Studios. I think involved with Bright Lights about midway through that set, but you were there from the beginning from Heavy Hitters. What's it been like kind of seeing things that you helped create out there in the wild and participating in this very diverse metagame? Has it lived up to your expectations of what it would be like to be a dev at LSS?
I mean, the thing is, people always ask, like, what card did you create? What did you come up with? And it's always like, well, I didn't really come up with anything on my own. It's more of a team effort. But it's really nice to actually see stuff that I've been helping to test and tuning with the rest of the team, like, actually come to fruition and become very powerful cards that everyone is enjoying and playing. I think in particular the heroes landed in a very good spot where right from the get-go, when they were released to the public, people were already identifying with these new heroes and their identities and, we love Kasai and, like, we're so glad she's an adult hero now, and, like, diversity of other heroes. Oh, KO with one arm, that's crazy. Just, I think it's just extraordinary to see the reaction from people about the game itself. It's not so much about any one person's contribution. It's more of like, we've created a great game and we've crafted this set to be very fantastic.
We did it.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. Karol, I'll come to you with what I think is the hardest question. What was the biggest surprise of a surprise-loaded Road to National season? Like, what is the one either, hero outcome or even a singular event? What's the one thing you just absolutely did not expect to happen that has kind of thrown your expectations for a loop?
Honestly, I think the Olympia win is a big one. I think 9-0 Olympia was really surprising to me. I think there's honestly the whole 2 weeks so far has been just full of surprises. We have heroes like Vincent, heroes like Kano taking out. Honestly, that was pretty massive. And that was an interesting one because you look at the heroes that Heavy Hitters boosted, the Guardians, the Warriors, the Brutes, and I feel like there was that kind of trend that people wanted to play these heroes. I want to play this with these amazing new cards, and I think that the Kano specialist really capitalized on that one. But yeah, I'm surprised that Reiner didn't win more, honestly. But no, we'll get into that later. I
Look, the metagame has changed week to week. I think that is clear. Victor Goldman with the most wins in this last week.
Actually, that was for me. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I'm not a big Victor fan, so
You know who's not surprised, though? You may be able to guess who is the largest supporter of Victor Goldman internally. Just whether you wanted to hear it or not, Kieran was there to tell you how good Victor was, how much Victor was going to be a force in this metagame. And I was like, all right, Kieran, there's a reason I keep my office door closed. Please leave me alone.
yeah.
But I got to hand it to you, Kieran. Really banger start for Victor Goldman, sitting up there right on top of the leaderboard alongside KO.
Yeah, you should have seen this guy after the battle hardened win, you know.
Guy Justin
Yeah.
from the Philippines won.
Yeah,
on the listing.
Justin
Yeah.
Koo, yep.
Just bouncing off the walls, really.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I was definitely one of like the biggest cheerleaders, also of Victor and Dev. But I feel his success has honestly surprised me with just how successful he has been. Because it feels like in such a diverse metagame, I suppose, when you're playing what equates to a numbers deck, he's all about the numbers. Like, you know, you have things like Test of Strength, Trounce, which lead to things like Primal Fight and just these big, beefy guarding attacks. You have the Miller's Grindstone, a huge fridge. But I thought he would be decent, but he's definitely exceeded my wildest dreams and how well he's done.
So I've thrown everyone off the scent a little bit. Obviously, I mentioned this is a Pro Tour primer. We're starting things off talking about Road to Nationals, but that's because Road to Nationals is going to inform that Pro Tour. This metagame is what we're going to be playing when we head to LA, and we do see it continue to evolve week to week. I expect things to change in Road to National season, and then I expect the final version of this metagame to really show itself at Pro Tour LA. And y'all are great devs. You know this game inside and out, so I'm going to ask you for some logical leaps now. And I want to carry it forward to the conclusion. What is going to be the end result of this RTN metagame when we get to Pro Tour LA? What is the final stage? How do you finally adapt? Say Victor goes on to dominate the rest of the season, or say Kano picks back up, KO just sorts itself out from the field. Where does this all end up? And Jayla, you, again, the most recently competing at these kind of high-level events. So I just want to get your take heading into this Pro Tour. Is there something that stands out to you as the next step forward? Is there a conclusion to this metagame just around the corner?
I think for the most part, people can get quite wrapped up with like the numbers of it all, and that's why KO has been performing quite well, is because people identify him as the most numbers heavy deck, the highest numbers in the field. But I think when it comes to a Pro Tour level, there's a lot of excellent strategies that you can actually use to subvert those numbers. And in particular, one that I would say is something that people are sleeping on, and I know all the devs agree with me, Reiner is probably a force for Pro Tour. I think that Intimidate is a form of evasion that not really anyone has respect for, but it does do a lot of work, especially when you're a numbers-based deck. So I think Reiner will be extremely powerful. I also think people are sleeping a bit on Kasai. I think people are starting to write her off a little bit, but I think that with the right pilot and the right list, she can really do work, and her consistency can get to the end.
Okay, so you're headed to the Pro Tour. Let's say you're about to participate. You got to choose one deck. I'm going to hold you to it. Which deck you're going to register at the Pro Tour?
I'm glad you started with this guy.
I mean, personally, I am a huge Phi stan, so if ever given the chance for a tournament like this, I would bring Phi. However, in this tournament, there's going to be a lot of Victor, in my opinion. I think there will be just enough Kasai to make it a little difficult. So I would probably just try and learn a Brute and probably bring Reiner.
Okay, so sticking to your guns, and I'm going to bring the same question over to you, Classic. I know you're also a huge Reiner fan. You mentioned your love for Victor, but sort of talk us through how you're evaluating this metagame and what conclusion it's going to lead you to.
And one thing I like to look at is not just the individual heroes, but the class breakdown of what's been doing well. So if I can sort of pull out my little data sheet for a second, I mean, what has been winning the most Road to Nationals, if we distill it down to classes rather than heroes? Looks like, and forgive me if I'm slightly off, but it looks like 31 Brute, 30 Guardian, 24 Warrior so far, 1, 2, and 3. Coincidentally, the 3 classes represented heavy hitters, so it's nice to see those doing well. I think sometimes you have to kind of look at what that implies for heroes you're thinking about playing. So I feel like heroes like Dromai, for example, which didn't really feature much in week 1, started to win a few road nationals in week 2, maybe as a response to things like Kano. But I would be a little worried about bringing a deck like that when I'm thinking, well, what if like 60% of the field is these Guardians and Brutes with just all the poppers in the world? So I do think Rhinar is like a bit of a sleeper for sure. And again, when I'm talking about poppers, heroes like Prism, which have started to, win a few road to nats here and there, have been getting a little bit of buzz. I'd be a little concerned, I think, unless I had a really good read on the metagame, bringing like a pure stompy, all heralds pumps version of Prism to a Pro Tour when I, might sit down and I'm playing against Victor round 1 and 2 and then KO round 3, and like, what is my strategy to get through these decks? So I think, like Jason mentioned, a deck like Rhinar, I feel like historically has kind of been what I like to call like the king of mid-range. Like he's an explosive deck where you have these Blood Rush Bellow turns, but he's also a very good grind out hero where he's maybe doesn't have sort of exceptional matchups into any particular deck, but he's pretty good into everything. Like, what's his core? Like, if I'm looking at the meta game, like, what am I just like an absolute dog into if I'm playing Rhinar?
So is
Like,
that a priority for you heading into a Pro Tour? Are you looking for something with just kind of a flat matchup spread and just good 50-50 matchups against everyone, and you want to leverage your skill? Because to me, if I don't see myself as one of the best players in the room, I kind of want to take a different approach. I want to find a polarized deck and try and read the metagame and try and get some of those 80% matchups to line up and just walk my way into a top 8. Maybe I'm lazy. I don't know. But
Well,
do you think there's merit in that approach?
there is. I think like decks like Fi, for example, you can high roll anyone on Fi. If you're experienced enough of a Kano player, I think even if people pack AB3 and Oasis, like there's still ways to navigate and win that matchup. But yeah, I don't know. The thing that stills down to me, what I'm really looking forward to is seeing what some of the top players innovate and come up with. I think we have a rich history of that at some of our biggest events. If I look back to events like, Michael Hamilton on the Wounded Bull Icelander, for example, Charles Dunn winning US Nationals on sort of Big Briar, which some people knew about but kind of came out of left field. We even have Matthew Folks winning on Channel Mount Heroic Briar, but with a difference, Little Minnowism, focused on like running cards like Yellow Snatch, for example. So I'm really curious to see what is that deck? Like, what is someone going to sort of crack the metagame with and be like, you know what? Like, maybe there's an Azuri deck floating around that people are saying, hey, I can play like a lot of disruption into these certain decks. I feel pretty comfortable playing into things like potentially even Victor. I think that one can be quite difficult. Into Kasai, playing off poppers, you're probably fine into Prism. If Dro's not there that much, you're kind of all good. So, I don't know. Like, to me, I quite like Rhinar. I think Rhinar is going to see some degree of success. So that's probably what I'm leaning towards.
Okay. Carol, I'm going to ask you a harder version of the same question because I know you have the capacity to pick up a rogue deck. You are good at finding angles to attack metagames that are not quite as straightforward. So maybe this is just your primary answer, but I want to ask a little bit of a varied question. What is the rogue deck that everyone is sleeping on that you would bring to the Pro Tour that you think has a real shot? Something that is not the focal point of the metagame right now. And it's really hard to like pin down what is a rogue deck because, as we mentioned, so many decks seeing success, but maybe something that's not in that very absolute top tier of results thus far.
Yeah, I think with such a wide metagame and so many heroes seeing success, and the power level is a little bit kind of more spread out in the previous than the previous metagames. Honestly, there's a bunch. You could bring Professor Ticklevossen. You can bring so many decks that just have been going under the radar this whole Road to National season and just win. I feel like one of the things that I think is kind of like the choice for a lot of players is, do I bring that consistent deck that has quite a flat matchup spread? Maybe I'll get through the CC rounds and get into the draft rounds, and that could be enough to get me into top 8. Or you go for something that, once you get to that top 8, you're just gonna win. And I think both strategies have their merit. As to what particular heroes, it's really hard to say. There's so many heroes in the game right now that have been seeing success, and I think it's going to be interesting to see the different teams decide on what they're going to do. I feel like in this particular one, I feel like decks like the the grind out Briar, or the kind of bringing like a Kano to the tournament, like we've seen and with some success in the first Pro Tour as this kind of rogue deck, it leaves you vulnerable throughout the early rounds, but once you get past that stage, I think it can be really successful. But yeah, I think Kano could still, you could, we could see the cycle of the metagame. Week 1, Kano does amazingly. Week 2, Kano stops winning. People give up those arcane barriers, those oasis respites, and kind of open themselves up again to that. So I think it's really tough to say what specific decks can be good rogue decks because a lot of them can, and I think it's up to. I think this could reward a lot of rogue specialists as well.
One thing about Kano, which I think you bring up, is I think in a very wide metagame as well, your sideboard slots become tighter and tighter. So it becomes a little bit more tempting to be like, hey, Kano might be 5% of the meta. Do I really want to dedicate AB3 to one hero? And like we saw at one of the first Pro Tours, I think, when it was the Starvo meta. Starvo, it was like basically Starvo, Chain, and Prism were the top 3 decks. And then there were some Kano players there who just said, look, like the Prism matchup, that's a little bit rough, but you know what? I feel great into 70% of the field. You look at the top 8 as well, and most of those Starvo decks, and I think correctly, were not playing Arcane Barrier, because there were like 5 Kanos in the tournament. Why would you use up 3 of your slots when you're meant to take from the mirror and these other decks?
Yep.
So heroes like Kano can really exploit that if they think people are like, oh, yeah, Kano did well week 1, it's faded week 2, who's going to show up on Kano?
Yeah, it's a fascinating sort of little dance we see play out at every single one of our Pro Tours, figuring out that sweet spot. I can't wait to see our best players engage with it. I'm going to ask just a very simple, straightforward question, and you don't need to expound upon it. Just give me a direct answer. What does the top 8 look like? I'll start with you, Karol. What heroes are going to make up that top 8?
Wow, that's. You said this was
just numbers. Give me a direct answer.
So I think there's going to be. I can't name decks, but I expect a lot of variety in the top 8. I think it's going to be either one each, one of like each hero.
8 different heroes?
8 different heroes. Or we're going to see some, maybe a team, maybe a group of players that cracked it, and we could see 4 or 5 of the same hero. I know this doesn't give you much because I haven't named a hero, but honestly, it's just so unpredictable. I've never been in a more unpredictable metagame, honestly.
Yep. No, that's fair. Mr. Classic, since I've recently declared you one of my best friends, I know you'll actually answer my question and give me 8 heroes that will appear in this.
I feel I talk lots. I feel no need to expound on it. I felt that in my heart, So I think, like Karol said, it's very difficult, but I expect to see honestly, I think at least one Kano. Like I think it's just such a powerful deck that there'll be one Kano master out there who also navigates through the draft rounds acceptably and just gets there. I do think we'll see probably a couple of brutes, whether that be Rhino or KO, hard to say, but I think there'll be enough players on those decks, so we'll see some of those. Surely at least one Victor, my boy, or my horse, is it the hero or the horse, who knows? But
nay comment, that's all I have to say to that.
And I'm unsure about Dash. I know there's a lot of Dash fans out there, but I'm going to go with no. People can make fun of me, but I don't think there'll be a Dash there. I think at least one Kasai will make it. I think it's such a consistent and such a strong deck that some of the really good players on it, again, has a lot of good matchups. And I also feel like there's a chance we'll see at least one Prism in the top 8. And I want to come back to Prism later, but I won't go on about it now, so I can pass that on.
Okay, so Kieran got about halfway to answering my question. Like I think he mentioned 8 decks in total in that, but surely J-Li, you won't disappoint me, and you'll just answer the question extremely directly.
You want the full 8 decks?
Full 8 decks. What 8 decks are in the top 8?
All right, we'll go Katsu. There's always one ninja. I feel.
Always one Katsu.
I think Kano. There's always one wizard as well. I think Kasai is very powerful. There will be a very good pilot on that. I think 3 brutes.
3 brutes. Okay.
Split of those brutes, please.
No, thank you. And then I think 1 guardian and then 1 just rogue deck.
Okay. Well, you got the closest to answering the question. So
I want to jump in. I'm gonna name some heroes.
Go ahead, name heroes. Sure.
One Rhina, 1 KO, 1 Leviah.
Okay, all 3 brutes.
wow,
Nice.
man.
Okay.
1 of each. We're gonna go with 1 Phi, 1 Azalea.
Are you just reading the heroes off?
Yeah, he's just going around.
I am looking at these ones. I think there will be. I'm hoping for. This is a long shot, but 1 Viscerai. Come on, somebody.
That is the longest of shots.
Yeah, that would be my rogue.
Okay.
pick.
Okay. Visser, I
It
believe.
would have been Reiner, but people actually think that Reiner's good these days. So
I honestly think one. Oh, sorry. You go.
so that's 5. Now you can jump in. You can give me some time to think.
I was just gonna say, talking of rope pick, one really cool one you mentioned is much maligned Teklo Vassen, who obviously has a number of very tough matchups. Like Dromai is a bit of a nightmare and all that, but if I think of what his good matchups are, I think of decks like Warrior and decks like Guardian. And to a certain extent, Sunbroots, not so much Reiner, but I think he has game to KO. And like I just read out, like the most road to national wins are Brute, Guardian, Warrior. Like if I'm thinking there's a huge field of just like Kasai's, Victor's, like KO, a few other decks out there. Like it's definitely a long shot. But talking to Brian's point, if you think I just want to spike all my good matchups,
Yeah.
like Teklo has some very, very good matchups, like very polarized matchups, but he has some very good matchups out there.
Yeah, and especially into those like slow dirtly decks because he can out-dirtle any of the
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got 3 brutes. Fi Azalea. I'll go with OG Dash,
Okay.
Prism,
Yep.
and Viscerai. So
Okay.
that's 8.
You have now answered the question fully. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. That's well done.
just for you, Brian.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
for you.
No, that
Okay,
means
do
a lot to me.
Do you have?
Do I have any? No, I'm just here to host, man. I don't-
Yeah, flip it back on him.
All right, how about this? How about this? I will make one call, and it's not going to be about decks. It's going to be about players at the Pro Tour. And I am confident that this is the moment. First of all, I already believe this to be true. But this is going to be the tournament where it becomes undeniable that Team Blue Pitch from Hong Kong is the actual best Flesh and Blood team in the world, as well as the best region for Flesh and Blood right now. It is Hong Kong. These players were undeniable at Worlds, and still, you don't see them really getting the same amount of buzz. And look, that's the way media works. The game is oftentimes focused on the U.S. on a week-to-week basis. We have our friends out there at Savage Feats putting together tournament coverage from the U.S., and we don't get to see the folks from Hong Kong as often. But I promise you, having watched these players play, having seen them step up on the international stage time and time again, this is the best team in the world. And I think they're going to make it absolutely undeniable at this Pro Tour. How about for you guys? Classic, is there anyone who stands out to you, either as an individual player or as a team you're really watching coming into this Pro Tour? Is there somebody who you think is poised for a breakout performance?
Yeah, I'm gonna give a shout out to Lucas Oswald.
Okay.
I think
Great pick. Yeah.
I think Lucas. I feel he's like one of. I think he won the Living Legend Battle Hardened right on Starvo. I feel he's one of those young players, kind of like of course everyone knows of Brody as well. I feel he's just one of these like obviously very, very good players who maybe just hasn't had that one really big win yet. And I don't know, like I try and follow some of the top 8s and even go down to top 16, top 32 to see who's doing well, who's pretty consistent. I feel I've seen his name pop up a lot of
always
times.
there.
He's always there. That's the thing. When you look at consistency, I think we focus a lot on who wins or who top 8s. But when, I think of other people, another one like Alan Lau, I believe his name comes to mind. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's made back-to-back top 16 at Worlds.
Worlds, yeah, I believe that's correct.
And it's I think maybe came 9th the year before last or something like that. And those are players that can slip under the radar because you're like, oh, who made top 8? You didn't make top 8, I don't care. But if you come top 16 at Worlds twice, you're a damn good player. So I think shout out to Lucas Odwell, shout out to Alan Lau. I think those are 2 of my players to watch. I think they're really primed to make a big performance. And honestly, Team Blue Pitch, they're awesome. They're just so damn good, man. So fully agree with you there.
Cool. Jayla, how about you? Anyone stand out to you?
Pretty much the same as you guys. I truly think that Team Blue Pitch is the best team in the world at the moment. And I would not be surprised if Xing and Pudding made a comeback. And I really think that it's about time that Alan made a top 8 as well.
Always right in contention.
But one individual player I have to say is Nick Butcher. I think he has been putting in a lot of work to just understand Limited, and I think that showed when he top 8'd the calling at Queenstown. So I think he is definitely a force, and I know he's an extraordinary deck builder, so he'll probably have the best deck in the room, maybe. But we'll see about that.
Well, one of the best CC players in the world as well, right?
100%.
Very consistently topping callings, winning callings, these events. Actually, one other small shout I want to give out is to there's a team over in the Netherlands. I have a friend over there who was working with them, and he was just pointing out to me that like they've been putting up some really good results in the European circuit recently at some of their callings, at some of the Battle Hardens, Road to Nationals. So maybe it's time for them to shine as well. We'll have to
So
see.
many great teams, great regions in Flesh and Blood. Truly a global game, and I think every single time we get together for one of these pro tours, these worlds, it's just so on display how talented players are from around the world. Of course, our reigning world champion, hailing from Greece. You can't forget about Alex Aguirre.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Carol. I'll hand it to you. I'll hand it to you.
No, honestly, like we can't forget our world champion. I think Alexander displayed top level game, and I think he's going to be coming in hot to the Pro Tour. My other person is Alan Lau, absolutely. And the rest of the Blue Pitch team are insane. I just want to echo that because just because I'm the last one saying it doesn't mean I want to copy what you guys are saying. But that was my thought. These guys are insane. These guys are becoming into a force. I also feel I hope that Charles Dunn does well. I think he's been playing amazingly recently, and if he just picks up Tekla-Vossen, it's good.
Are you listening, Charles? That's all you have to just pick up Tekla-Vossen. It's that easy.
Absolutely.
Why haven't you done it already? Now he knows.
Surely Team Poland, right?
Yeah, Polish place, of course. I think
Goes
it's
without
just-
saying.
Yeah, it goes without saying.
Fair
Absolutely.
enough. I love that you mentioned Alex. I'm so looking forward to seeing what Alex does now that the spotlight's on him, right? When he shows up and he wins Worlds, he was kind of, I won't say anonymous, like obviously a very, very strong player, but the world didn't know his name yet. Now they do. Now they're going to be watching. I bet we kick off Pro Tour coverage watching him from round one. That's generally how we do things at the Pro Tour. We try and watch our defending champion from the last big event. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he adapts to being one of the faces of Flesh and Blood now. And I'm excited to see that story play out.
And a lot of the other Greek players as well. I feel like that is becoming like quite a strong hub.
And that's the way it works when someone spikes a big event like that. The entire community galvanizes around that player. They become the linchpin. We saw it happen in Spain with Pablo Pintor winning the first Pro Tour and then building that immense Spanish scene around his victory. Same thing could be happening in Greece right now.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see the Philippines as well. One of our most passionate sort of like areas for playing Flesh and Blood. Like huge, they just like their armories, battle hardens, all their events just seem to have massive turnout. They run tons of learn to play. I see them all over social media as well. And I feel that's a sort of a young scene, but a growing one. And I think just as they get more exposure to some of these high level events, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone from there, like just sort of have a breakout tournament. I mean, I say that, but I mean, Justin already won a calling, right? But like, I mean, sort of at the next level up at the Pro Tour.
Yeah, you never know which event is going to be the moment a scene breaks out. Worlds was obviously that moment for Blue Pitch, and I think it will continue. But any other number of new teams could show their face at this Pro Tour. All right, gentlemen, that's going to about do it. Final thoughts. Anyone have any pressing concerns they want to get out there? Anything they want to predict? Last wild prediction from anyone?
Yes, I want to see if someone turns up on like a sort of hybrid Prism deck list, because I think most of the ones we've seen so far have been sort of the more pure stompy, so like just Heralds, just some of your pumps or like your combat tricks and things like that. But I do wonder if there's some Prism players out there saying like, look, there's so much Guardian, like, maybe I have some ways to beat that matchup anyway. But what if I just want to really solidify that and a couple other matchups by maybe playing like a hybrid Iris plus Luminaris build and see if that has some success? You give up some points in some matchups, but you really solidify others. So that'll be interesting to me to see if someone wants to sort of take that leap of faith and say, I'm going to shore up the bad matchups and still win my good ones anyway.
Interesting. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. Anyone else? Last thoughts? Okay, that does it. I hope everyone enjoyed checking in with our first Pro Tour preview show. It was a lot of fun to do. Let us know what you want to see when we do these type of shows. We're going to be doing more of this. We have this beautiful studio set up now here in Auckland. Happy to get my boys together and come in and chat a little bit with y'all before these big events. If there's anything you'd like us to cover next time, anything we got wrong today, feel free to let us know in the comments down below. And we'll be back with more action here from Auckland and more action from LA in just a few weeks. Do not miss it.